in showing a different data, we'll probably use the first graph. But as data analyst, it's your responsibility to show, not to hide the data, right? To show the other counterpart also, to get the true picture of reality. Because as data analyst, I think your biggest job is to push the data to wisdom. Right? And the same graph of 4.8%, roughly I've approximated it to 5%, and used in a more creative way, which kind of shows how much the balance is still disturbed. So why are we talking so much about data visualization? Why there is so much emphasis today on data visualization is because you as data analyst, you will be doing the data analysis and giving it to someone, but the end user is someone who is very, very different or sitting very, very far across from you. And it's your job to bridge that gap by putting the right data visualization in place. So before, we have spoken about data visualization, before we start talking about narrative storytelling, I'm going to show you a small video. Even if you don't understand the words, it's absolutely fine. Change the word and change the word. So even in your stories, change the words and you'll be able to make a lot of difference. Because stories are nothing but truth well told. Sometimes we need to package the truth as a story to appeal to everyone. Cheap and Dan Healthiness in the book Made to Stick said data are just summaries of thousands of stories. Tell a few of those stories to help make the data meaningful. And it's very right. If you see one of the articles which had come in Hindu about does it pay to be a farmer in India? Has anyone gone through it? I'll show it to you later. So they came up with a lot of graphs, and today you know what's the situation of the farmers in India. Lack of water, they are in huge debt. So it all focused on how the farmers are in debt today, what's their, how much do they spend on agriculture and other factors that they need to face. But the whole article never spoke about the story, because of which it never appealed to our emotions. But if you see how do the people who collect data do it, they go to the farmer's house, they ask a lot of questions, right? They get the data, do the analysis and make the graphs. Even if the data collector is able to tell one story out of it, or the article, the Hindu paper had carried one story, it would have made a lot of difference to understand the plight of farmers today. Just remind me, I will show you that article at the end. tell any, use any words or text or tell any stories, it's very important that you tell an authentic story, right? Whether it's the story of Nokia that was told in the African malnutrition case, whether some of you were analyzing the Teach for India data as to turnover was a problem, right? The Teach for India data, when it was being analyzed, the attrition was the subject, and there was a lot of analysis going on as to why the employees at Teach for India are leaving the organization. So at that time, everyone was focusing on graphs as to what is the single most reason, which is good, which has to be done anyways. But if one story is told of a fellow who comes to Teach for India and why he or she leaves, is it the mismatch of expectations, is it the salary, or whatever the reasons are. So that one story in your report makes a lot of difference rather than just giving dry and abstract numbers. Because when you tell a story, everything falls into place. Even if you are using some numbers, it's very important to relate it with something very, very familiar, right? So if you're talking about a financial project and you're talking about reducing the cost of a particular task by say 100 rupees. So if you say I'm able to reduce this, the cost of this task by say a cup of coffee, right, which typically costs 100 rupees in a cafe coffee day, we are able to relate something that's very simpler, something that we see day to day. Draw people in by telling your story about people and not just numbers. If you're talking about attrition, why people are leaving Teach for India, take the names of few of those fellows and tell that, out of, say there's 30% attrition, so 3 out of 10 employees are leaving. Take the name of those 3 employees and say they were a very good performance at Teach for India. Because that is when you will be able to put your point across to the higher management. Use a lot of metaphors in the language that you use when it comes to data analysis. Like if you are talking about completion of a project, can you talk about it, the growth of a seed to a plant? Or taking on a journey of mountain climbing, so you're at the bottom and you are able to reach the peak. Right? So that when you relate it to a journey, when you relate it to the growth of a plant, it's a lot easier for people to relate to. And add a lot of sensory elements. When I say sensory elements, is there something that the audience can see? Is there something the audience can feel? Is there something that the audience can hear in your story? Right? So there was a report in which they spoke about how the lack of irrigation water is affecting the production of wheat. And what this report shows is, they said, okay, 30% drop in irrigation water leads to say 25% drop in production of wheat. But then they added one more line and said that caused a lot of worry among the farmers. They were worried because they know that there won't be any food in the next few months. So it's easier to relate than to just say 25% of drop in production of wheat. Because hunger, anxiousness, worry, concern, it's something all of us relate to. So bring in little emotions, bring in sensory elements in your data. And some of you might have seen this. This is how Steve Jobs does it.
It's so thin, it even fits inside one of these envelopes that we've all seen floating around the office. And so let me go ahead and show it to you now.
He didn't talk about the thickness of the laptop in millimeter because it would have been difficult for people to relate. What he did was just take the laptop, put it with the envelope, because we know what envelope looks like, right? It's easier to relate to. So can you relate to something which is around you, right? And he just said, now can you feel it? I think it makes a lot of difference rather than just giving the technical specifications of the laptop. We're talking so much about stories and narratives. So what's the structure of a story? Anyone? Yeah, okay, I'll show you. The story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But not everything that has a beginning, middle, and end is a story. Right? It could be a dog as well. Right? It's a different thing. A dog's life could be a story, but per se it's not a story. So there's something more that goes into the story. Anyone would like to try? What is it that makes the story? Flow, okay. What we learn. What we learn from the story. Order actually doesn't matter. These days, if you see a lot of videographers are experimenting with that. Yes, interpret the story, but the story that I showed you of the blind beggar, it was not in the order. The lady wrote something, she went, and that end came near. The end came later where they showed what she wrote.
Characters information.
Yeah?
Information.
Information.
Characters.
Okay, let me give you one example.
There's some completeness in every single part of it. So the beginning itself would probably be a story.
Okay. Now let me tell you something. There's a boy and a girl who are studying in a college and they fell in love with each other. And as they completed their college, they told their parents and the parents got them married. Right? Is it a story?
Not a good story.
No difficulties. No difficulties. Yeah, you said it right. Now let me twist the same story. There's a boy and a girl. Boy belongs to the upper caste and is very, very rich. And the girl belongs to the lower caste and is very, very poor. They finish their studies and they tell their parents and the father says, "Nahi, ye shaadi nahi ho sakti." Now this has the potential of becoming a story because now there is a problem, there is a difficulty, there is a challenge, there is a struggle, right? So no story is complete unless you have a problem, unless you have a struggle to be overcome. And that struggle or challenge has to be a believable one. If you give an impossible task, no one is again going to believe your story unless you have a fantasy movie. So your beginning of a story, whether it's a data story or the narratives that you are adding, needs to have the context or the assumptions or the introduction. Where is the story set up? The middle of the story has the problem or the conflict or the struggle. And the end of the story needs to have a conclusion, right? A logical end, as you say, the completeness of it, or the forecast, because sometimes a lot of data that you analyze needs to have a forecast. There won't be any conclusion to it. It's a forecast that you give based on the patterns. So can you tell the data story in one graph? If you're just doing the analysis of a simple graph, so you begin with the context and the problem, make your chart title like the movie headline, which gives a peek into what the story is all about. Give the findings which will help the audience or someone who is reading your report to understand the message and to understand the findings. And you end it with a conclusion or recommendation. So let's look at one example here. This is a graph about HR grievances received and closed. Do you think it's a good graph? No. Everyone is saying no. Why is it not a good graph?
The percentage of closure is almost the same.
The percentage?
Of closure is almost the same.
Percentage of closure is almost same. Okay. Does it give you an entry point into the graph? Do you know where to look, where to focus? Neither the chart title nor the graph is helping you to focus where you should set your eyes on. Right? Let's see if we reproduce the same graph using line graph. And now you know where the story is. Right? You know where to focus on. Even the data labels has been given only where the story is. On the left side of the graph, there's not much. So data labels also need to be used judiciously. So this story is about the HR grievances. Typically in the month of May and June, the grievances increase because the increment letters are handed over to the employees, which lead to the increase of grievances. So this story is about, okay, the grievances have increased, but the HR department was able to catch up with the grievances. But later, though the grievances reduced, the closure of the grievances was not happening. So why was so? So, this is a one graph story where we are seeing the chart title itself is HR department, grievances received and closed, the gap is increasing. So now you know where the story is. The story is all about the gap increasing, so the grievances per se are reducing. So increment letters were handed over, there was discontent among employees. That's one of the reasons. But the resolution was lagging after the grievances started reducing, that's from July onwards. So one reason could be there was attrition in the HR team. The HR team itself, a lot of employees left, or the grievances were of very, very difficult nature, which made the closure difficult. So what's the recommendation from your side? That more resources are required to avoid the backlog of grievances, or the SLAs need to be changed. If the grievance is very complex in nature, you need to increase the number of resolution days. So just with one page or one page report, you can tell the story. Just experiment with the different types of graphs which tell the story better. This is the information which is about who is suing whom in the mobile business. Again, Devangana would say there are too many things to look at. You don't know where to focus and how to make sense out of it, right? So there's one website called informationisbeautiful.net. They reproduce the same information in a very beautiful manner. So here the size of the logo is proportional to the revenues. While the red one is where the revenues are reducing, Nokia being there, and the grey ones where the revenues are increasing. So what are some of the do's and don'ts in the database? So some of the do's, you would see is how do you judge whether a graph is good or not? Usually there are two parameters to consider. One is the speed of the understanding, in the sense how easily you are able to understand the graph, and second, whether it's sticky. Sticky in the sense whether it sticks to your memory. Some of the people debate that the speed of understanding is more important because today, we live in an attention deficit world. If people don't understand your graph in one go, the chances are they won't put much effort to understand it later. Right? So speed of understanding is important, but at the same time, I think the chart or your story being memorable is also equally important. So try to get a good balance between the two. Reduce the non-data ink, reduce the chart which doesn't add to the story. Remove the grid lines if not required, remove the bold characters if not required. Use data labels wisely, because data labels should be used to get someone's attention. Don't mark all the data points if it's not required. Minimize the eye movement. If you're using legend, what happens? Your eyes are moving to and fro to understand what relates to what. So if you remove the legend and mark it directly, it's a lot easier for the audience to understand your graphs. And it's easier to compare the length of the bars by areas. Right? I think we have already seen that in the pie chart. Don't let too many things compete for your attention. Don't use too many colors. Yeah, use colors very, very judiciously. Avoid 3D charts. Don't just use default colors given by the tool, because the colors given by the tool are usually very, very colorful. Looks very attractive but doesn't serve the purpose. Avoid red and green on the same display because of color vision deficiency. And don't overemphasize something. It's better to de-emphasize others and let your story be the emphasis. Am I running out of time?
We are actually
Okay. So it's okay. We'll skip that. There is no one right way of doing the data story. Do whatever tells your story best. Numbers have an important story to tell. They rely on you to give them a clear and convincing voice. All of you as data analysts have tremendous power, and with power comes responsibility. So please do good data visualization and make the world a better place. That brings to the end of the presentation. If you have any queries, you write to me. Feel free to write to me. I just show you that article of Shri. So does it pay to be a farmer in India? I think one picture and it tells the story very beautifully. You understand it doesn't pay to be a farmer in India, right? Just one picture it has told the entire story. They have shown a lot of graphs and this is a donut chart, it's not a good chart. Basically you need to avoid all the charts which start with the name of food, whether it's donut chart, pie chart or spaghetti chart. So you can go through this article, is there on the internet. So you will realize that there's a lot of data but somewhere it has not been done too well. And there's a better way to do it. And at the same time they could have added one narrative, one real story of a farmer to make the impact of someone who's reading the paper. That brings us to the end of the presentation. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Navnita. Even though we are sort of running like just 5 minutes or 10 minutes late, but I think we still have time for more questions. So if you have any questions right now, you can ask.
Looks like data analysis and data visualization need two different set of skills, especially the storytelling part that you have. I could relate to it the most because I come from fiction writing background. So the show, not tell, and all of those principles of the conflict resolution and all. So how does this work? I mean, how do you shift from the engineering task to the
Right. So I think first is you need to realize that the stories are required. Once you realize that stories are required to make the graphs better, to make it more appealing, then once that realization is there, then you will try hard to bring in the story part. I think story part is very easy for you to bring in the data analysis, right? You know how to present the charts better. Now the challenge is in adding the narratives, because sometimes as data analyst, you do not have any real story with you. Because the data collectors have done their task, what you have is data. But can you build a narrative? Can you add some metaphors? Okay? So as I was telling, whether it's a farmer, it's something very easy for you. You know that sugarcane is a very, very profitable crop today. But sugarcane at the same time requires a lot of water. So if you go to areas in Ahmednagar in Maharashtra, they have stopped the production of sugarcane. So can you bring that story in your graph? The sugarcane is very profitable, it requires a lot of water. So there's a whole bunch of farmers are going against the politicians because all the politicians own the sugarcane fields in Maharashtra, which is causing the water deficit. It was a huge problem in Maharashtra. So you need to start linking that. So do you just give a farmer story, or do you relate the crops to the actual happenings around? Right? Try to use metaphors, try to use, whether it's coffee, whether it's envelope, it's something which is easier to relate to, rather than just saying. Even when you say that 30% of farmers are having a problem, more than 30%, if you say that 3 out of 10 farmers are facing issue, even they say percentage looks more abstract, but the moment I say 3 out of 10, it's easier for me to visualize.
yes.
Right? So through your words, through your text, are you helping someone visualize or understand it in a better way? It comes with practice. It's not that easy. It looks very easy in the presentation, but when you actually do it, it will take time. But I think once you realize it, you will do it.
So Navnita, can you tell me a little about what Storywallahs does?
Okay. Storywallahs, was founded by Mr. Amin Haq, who is an advertising and a theatre personality. And Storywallahs was started about 3 years back as a one-man story, and the team has slowly grown. But Storywallahs is primarily a story consulting, story training, and storytelling performances. So we work with corporates, we train leaders on how to tell a business story, how to tell their own personal stories to motivate the team, right? How to tell vision stories. If you need to motivate the team needs to see the vision that the leader has. So how do you tell those vision stories, right? How to do data storytelling, because graphs are an integral part of the communication, of the presentations that the leaders give. We also work with schools and educators on how to simplify curriculum with the help of stories. Because children, just like adults, children remember stories, but they forget the concepts. So, how to storyfy the curriculum, whether it's science, maths, or English, through stories. And we also do storytelling performances.
So now how big is the team and what?
We are a team of about 7 to 8 employees.
MA education or?
There is no education.
I'm asking, are you from tech background or?
I was also from tech background. I'm myself an engineer. I've worked as a software engineer. But I did my MBA. I took a break post motherhood, and then I was looking for something. So I started working with special children. I started telling them stories, and that's how I got to know Storywallahs, and that's how my journey began. Thank you so much.